Hi, I'm Mal, and this is Miniature Warriors. Welcome back to the channel. Today we start a new campaign, Longstreet 2, The War in the West. We're going back, we're playing Sam Mustafa's Longstreet, and it's a very interesting campaign system. Every player plays for themselves. There's no campaign map. You play a set, as a commander, you play a set number of battles in each year, and you gain what's called epic points. Epic points are a measure of how successful you are on the battlefield and how successful you will be post-Civil War life. How good your autobiography will sell. But anyway, as we go through the campaign, each player fights to gain epic points. This will lead them down decisions. Some will be good, some will be bad. But anyway, they accumulate these points. And at the end of each battle, I will be flashing those points up to see where the players actually stand. I currently have about 8 or 9 players, and it's 1861.
The Road to War, November 1860, June 1861. Abraham Lincoln wins the presidency in November 1860 without carrying a single Southern state. Southern leaders view his election as a direct threat to slavery and states' rights. South Carolina secedes in December, followed swiftly by Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, and Texas. Delegates from these states meet in Montgomery in February 1861, forming the Confederate States of America and appointing Jefferson Davis as provisional president. James Buchanan, still president, avoids decisive action, allowing the Confederacy time to organize. Lincoln is sworn in on March 4, declaring secession unlawful and pledging to preserve the Union. Tensions mount as federal forts in the South remain under Union control. At Fort Sumter in April, Confederate guns open fire, and a state of war is ushered in by the carronade of heavy artillery. Lincoln responds by calling for 75,000 volunteers. In turn, Virginia, Arkansas, North Carolina, and Tennessee secede and join the Confederacy. By late June, 11 states stand in rebellion. The Union focuses on holding border states like Missouri and Kentucky, while both sides mobilize armies and prepare for confrontation. The nation is no longer debating, it plunges into war. In June 1861, the Western theater stood poised on the edge of escalating conflict. Kentucky's neutrality created a tense buffer between Union-held Ohio and Confederate-leaning Tennessee, while Missouri teetered toward internal division. Control of the Mississippi River emerged as a strategic imperative, with Union forces looking to secure key points like Cairo, Illinois. The Confederacy aimed to fortify Columbus, Memphis, and the river's southern reaches. Both sides scrambled to raise troops and solidify loyalties in the border states. The theater's vast geography and limited infrastructure posed logistical challenges but also offered opportunities for maneuver and surprise that would soon shape the war's course. In early 1861, Missouri's loyalties were deeply divided. Governor Claiborne Jackson, sympathetic to the Confederacy, mobilized the pro-secession Missouri State Guard, while Union Captain Nathaniel Lyon countered with Federal troops and German-American volunteers. Tensions erupted in May with the Camp Jackson affair, where Lyon's forces clashed with secessionist militia in St. Louis. A fragile truce collapsed in June when Lyon rejected Jackson's demands to limit Federal troops. Lyon seized Jefferson City and defeated rebel forces at Boonville, forcing them south. Confederate generals McCulloch and Price joined forces near Springfield, prompting Lyon to launch a preemptive strike at Wilson's Creek on August 10. Wilson's Creek runs north to south and was crossable at the Mark Ford. Neither army is aware of any other crossing points. On the western bank of the creek is the Edwards House, a Union objective. Running west to east, across the center of the battlefield is the Branch Stream, a fordable watercourse that slowed movement. At the southern edge of the battlefield is the Sharp House. The rebel commander on the field, Brevet Colonel Jonas Pembroke, must deploy one brigade on the eastern bank of Wilson's Creek and his other 2 brigades on the west. Colonel Pembroke has the option to brigade his 3 cavalry regiments into one command, and to flank march it and have it arrive on the Federal right flank. But its arrival time was not certain, so the rebel commander chose not to take this option. As we come onto the field of battle, we are looking from the northwest. Two of the three Union brigades have formed line of battle, and are advancing on the rebels massed in the Gentle Valley to their front. The Ohio Brigade of Brevet Colonel John DeWitt is on the Federal left and William K. Howell's brigade on the right. The whereabouts of the 3rd Union Brigade is not known to the rebels. Colonel Pembroke has two of his brigades deployed forward, one either side of Wilson's Creek, and his 3rd Brigade, that of Brevet Colonel William Alamo Williams, deployed in depth. On the eastern bank of the creek is Brooks' rebel brigade. Brooke has been warned of a possible attack from the northeast, and so has formed his line of battle facing the direction. As the first shots are fired, and rebel shells smash into the advancing Yankee infantry, Colonel William Alamo Williams, a tall and lanky Texan, orders his brigade to move to the west and form line of battle behind Pembroke's brigade. At the eastern end of the Federal line, Colonel DeWitt's Ohio Brigade paused, dressed its ranks, and then, with a deafening hurrah, charged. The untried blue-clad recruits swarming forward, hurtling themselves towards the rebels. Captain Parrott's battery, of Pembroke's brigade fired a salvo of canister and then made for the rear, losing 2 guns to the Yankee onslaught. The 60th Georgia also gave ground, but only grudgingly, as the combined weight of the massed rifles of the 57th and 53rd Ohio made itself felt. Pembroke, riding his line, steadied the shaken rebel infantry, and with some haste, sent a dispatch to Brooke on the far bank of Wilson's Creek. It read:
To 3rd Brigade. Push your cavalry forward, find a ford, and cross Wilson's Creek. I need you to get on the Yankee flank and push them westwards. Pembroke.
Off to the west, Colonel Henry Howell pushed the Federal right flank forward, threatening to envelop the rebel position. Pembroke, sensing the imminent danger, countered by sending the cavalry of Cobb's Georgia Legion far out to the rebel left, extending the Confederate line. Back further east, DeWitt's Ohio Brigade, having driven the rebels backwards, failed to exploit its initial successes. The Confederate line buckled rearwards, and then, steadied as Colonel Alamo Williams maneuvered his regiments to their rear, preparing to undertake a passage of lines, relieving the hard-pressed troops of Pembroke's brigade. Colonel Pembroke deployed the 27th Virginia in and around the Edwards House, denying the Federal commander his objective. The rebels continued to maneuver troops to their left, with all 3 rebel cavalry regiments initially marching westwards, moving behind the double line that the infantry were now deployed in. DeWitt, not wanting to lose the momentum gained during the first charge, once again sent his regiments forward, smashing into the Confederate first line. After a sharp and short melee, the rebels once again gave ground. The rebel regimental officers scrambled to rally their men, but once again the 27th Virginia held firm around the Edwards House. With the Confederate troops engaged in the center, Colonel Howell, on the Union right, continued to envelop the rebel left. As this was happening, at the other end of the line, Brooks' rebel brigade was searching for a ford to cross Wilson's Creek and get at the Yankees. Directly in front of the Edwards House, a deadly firefight was developing between the 77th Ohio and the 27th Virginia. The 1st Ohio, that had been on the 77th's right flank, had swept forward and a dangerous gap opened between the two regiments. On the 1st Ohio's right, the 53rd's advance had been checked and the regiment driven backwards, leading to the 1st Ohio being isolated in front of the rebel battle line. Sensing the opportunity, Colonel Alamo Williams launched the 5th Texas forward. With unloaded muskets, the rebel yell went up, the Texans surged forward and smashed into the exposed Yankee regiment. Under the impact of the charge, the Federal regiment staggered rearwards, falling backwards towards the safety of their own lines and the top of the ridge. With Colonel DeWitt's assault repulsed, and the Unionist battle line, back where it had started, atop the ridge, Colonel Howell on the Federal right, continued to mount the pressure on the rebel commander. Howell maneuvered his regiments forward, threatening to envelop the rebel left. The 2nd Wisconsin Cavalry circled far out to the west, drawing the enemy cavalry of Cobb's Georgia Legion to conform, redeploying away from the Confederate center. Howell's infantry meanwhile were preparing to cross the branch stream to his command's front. Unknown to the rebels, was that the Federal players had been given the option to flank march a brigade that would arrive in the rear of the Confederate position. The arrival time of this brigade was not known by any players, bar the player commanding it, and even then, it had a random factor added to the die roll. The brigade arrived at this juncture of the engagement, near the Sharp House at the southern or bottom edge of the map. Brevet Colonel Henry Heathcliff's Federal Brigade arrived just west of the Sharp House in the rear of the rebel position. Heathcliff's hard-marching infantry quickly formed line and, taking the enemy by surprise, delivered volley after volley into the vulnerable enemy. The sound of musketry to the rear of the Southerners' position sounded the alarm to Colonel Pembroke, who ordered elements of Alamo Williams' brigade to about face and drive the enemy from the field. As Heathcliff's troops marched on to the south, Brooks' brigade had found a ford and was forcing the Federal troops near the Edwards House to wheel to their left and then withdraw as the 48th Tennessee, supported by the 49th Virginia, with an ear-shattering rebel yell, drove them backwards. The battle in the center of the field fell into a lull, as DeWitt maneuvered his brigade away from the Confederate threat to his left flank, and Colonel Howell brought his artillery into action. DeWitt from his position on the ridge could see the smoke of battle off to the south that marked Heathcliff's arrival on the field. The 3-2 advantage that the Confederates, up to this point, had enjoyed, had evaporated, and the Rebs were now surrounded and in a desperate fight. A cavalry charge by the 4th Tennessee Cavalry crashed into the exposed flank of one of Heathcliff's infantry regiments, breaking the raw recruits who fled the mounted onslaught. Heathcliff's own cavalry came on at the trot and a swirling melee of trooper against trooper ensued. On the far bank of the branch stream, Howell's 4 infantry regiments continued to mass, preparing to launch against the hard-pressed regiments of Colonel Pembroke. To the south, Heathcliff sent his regiments forward. The 12th Illinois, in a wild charge, clearing Barrett's Missouri battery at bayonet point, with the rebel battery commander managing to withdraw 4 of his 6 guns before his position was overrun. The rebels now found themselves fighting back-to-back as the Federal encirclement tightened around Pembroke's command. The fighting around the Edwards House now intensified, as DeWitt threw one of his regiments into the assault. The 27th Virginia, supported by the 48th Tennessee, drove the Bluecoats back, managing to hold the objective. Further west, Alamo Williams' brigade launched 5 heroic charges, all in desperation, to stem the Federal advance and regain the initiative for the rebels. The hand-to-hand fighting was intense, but little could be done to turn back the tide of blue-coated Yanks, and slowly but surely the ring around the Confederates was tightening. Colonel DeWitt decided to make another push for the Edwards House, but Alamo Williams launched the 5th Texas forward in a sharp counterattack that saw the Texians fail to drive the enemy back. With both units retiring away from their opponent, the Edwards House left between the lines. DeWitt's right-hand regiment, the 57th Ohio, supported by Colonel Howell's left-hand regiment, assaulted the rebel line further to the west. The clash of arms in this part of the field was horrendous, and the Confederate battle line recoiled under the weight of the Federal attack. The confusion in the rebel army, on the west bank of Wilson's Creek, grew as the casualties mounted from repeated Federal charges. The only rebel successes were coming from the Confederate right, where Brooks' rebel brigade was driving the worn regiments of Colonel DeWitt's brigade from the western approaches to the ridge. Brooks' brigade was doing too little too late. But the Southern Army's left flank was collapsing, as it struggled to repel the enemy hitting it from front and rear. With heavy casualties in his own brigade, Pembroke ordered the rebel army to withdraw. The day's fighting was done as the Confederate army withdrew to the southeast, with Brooks' brigade covering the withdrawal. It would, however, live to fight another day.
Each player starts the campaign with a brigade consisting of 4 10-stand infantry regiments, a battery of 6 light smoothbores, and a 10-stand cavalry regiment. All the troops are eager recruits. Post each battle, the players each roll dice. To see if they are promoted, the number of dice is based on your epic points gained, and the number of successes required is dependent on the next rank. Players then draw campaign cards that add reinforcements and promote units within their command or put into play other effects. Each commander also has selected a biography card, fleshing out their pre-war careers. Some give them political influence in either the state capital or nation capitals, influencing the promotion dice and or the reinforcements sent to their command. Some have an effect on the actual tabletop battle, being skills they learnt during the Mexican War or the battles against the Indians along the frontier. As the player commanders make decisions, be it to charge or not to charge on the tabletop battlefield or how to use a campaign card, each of their commands start to take on a personality, each of their own, reflecting their commander. During the campaign, the accumulation of epic points will be reported by the Western Gazette post each battle.
Yankee victory, rebel defeat. First game down, Battle of Wilson's Creek. It was an interesting battle. The players had non-historical options, and one side gambled, the rebels did. But anyway, hope to see you again for the next video.